at this point, I'm ready for sweeping change. We've watched 2 consecutive weeks, Sarah, of a team that, Kyle Van Noy gets up there and he says what he has to say and what he should say, that he doesn't feel like it's a lack of effort. I'll continue that thought in a second. Just listen to Kyle from his words.
I think effort is a issue. I'm going to piggyback off. I know it's not a lame answer, but like it's fundamentals. Like we got to get off blocks. We got to tackle. I know people don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. That's what you got to do better. In our positions, you got young guys that they got to grow up fast. They don't have time to mature over time. We need them now to step up, and the older guys need to step up too. Guys that have been here for a couple years just got to play better, top down, and no excuses.
We'll get to the rest of his comments in just a bit because there were some very telling ones as it relates to the messaging coming from key members of this staff. John Harbaugh and Zach Orr included, on top of the accountability question, which was the final one that was posed at Kyle Sarah before he wrapped up that press conference. But here's why I'm ready and receptive to sweeping change. We've watched 2 consecutive weeks and maybe even 2.5 weeks if you go back to the Detroit game, where you've seen a team that, yes, it is utterly bruised and broken, to use Dan Orlovsky's words from this past week, broken. That's what he referred to as the Ravens. But the same exact body language showed up yet again. And that's a problem. And I think this is a perfect segue, and let me know if you agree, and to get into what I just teased from Kyle. Because these were 2 telling answers from him.
Yeah, I think
one related to the messaging, 2 related to the accountability. And guess what? The latter of those 2, Kyle didn't feel prepared to answer in that moment in time. I don't know if that was related to his wise beyond years and how many years he's been in this league and saying, hey, let cooler heads prevail. Don't let me say something right now maybe that I'll regret. Or maybe, just maybe, if you take him by his word, and you'll listen to it in just a second, he wants to learn about the guys to his right and left that are about to stare maybe the most adversity that this Ravens organization has had in years in the eye and see how they respond before he actually goes on record for saying whatever it is that he feels maybe is happening within this organization. Listen to both of those answers that I just teased there that were hurled his way just a short while ago.
Messages that are coming from John or Zach or whomever aren't getting through in some way?
That's probably a question that's above my pay grade. Probably, I think that's a Harbaugh and ZO question. To be honest, I think their messaging is fine, and we got to be the group to take that and go out and do the simple things right, the fundamentals. Easy, basic stuff.
Accountability. Have you seen enough of that from the team after these losses, and what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll be able to answer that better after the week, to be honest. To just be blatant honest. I feel like there's accountability, but we'll see.
Whew. So, I saw your eyes. I saw your facial reaction there, your body language, as he answered the first part of that question. Again, not exactly a ringing endorsement, Sarah, in terms of the messaging that he feels like right now from John Harbaugh and Zach Orr. He said, that's probably a question that's above my pay grade. I think their messaging is fine. And that pause was deafening in the second part of that answer. That pause felt like an hour long, Sarah. This is one of the longest tenured, not Baltimore Ravens, but longest tenured NFL players. He's a multi-time Super Bowl champion. He's somebody that got up there and faced the music after this one. And obviously he hasn't been in the game the last 2 weeks to be a part of what's been catastrophic for this team, but he was a part of it for the first 2 weeks, a win and a loss. Those comments to me are extremely telling. What was your take on that?
Well, he said he tried to pass the buck and say that's a question for John Harbaugh and Zach Orr, but actually it's the perfect question for Kyle Van Noy because that's a question for the players. Like the question is, are the players like, are you receiving their messages? Like, are you hearing it? Are you guys receiving it? He's a defensive leader, one of the few that is a veteran that played today because he's back from injury and there's still other guys that are injured. And so I can't say how many times have we heard like Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey's like, no, it's on us. It's on us. It's on us. We got to take this and we got to go. Now he did also, we played the clip where he said, hey, we got to have better fundamentals. He's like, I know that sounds lame to say. So he's not excusing the players and the play that they've been putting out on tape, and how can you when you see the tape? So I mean, just the way he was like when he got that question, he's like, that's probably above my pay grade. No, that is exactly your pay grade. This, and your answer was because listen, as the leader, he can't openly just say, "Oh yeah, no, we're not hearing it." Because that's something that you are supposed to say behind closed doors. That even back in the mutiny time, right? The season before the Ravens went on to win a Super Bowl. It's crazy to think that the mutiny that was going on. And Ed Reed was a part of that. And he was a leader. Ed never really went to the media. He went and he went after the coaches himself. And so Kyle Van Noy saying it's above my pay grade is like the nicest way he could have put it. If the messaging isn't getting there, that's the nicest way you could have put it. Because if the messaging was getting there, you'd say, no, we got the message. It's just up to us. And we've heard that before. He did not say that. And then it was also super telling when it was like, are you saying that there's accountability? And he's like uncomfortably rubbing his own forearms. And he's like, well, I'll let you know. Like that, like my face when you said, talking about my facial expressions, it's like it reminded me of that Drewski meme where it's like, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean we'll see later this week? Like, well, what does that mean? We've gone through 5 weeks of this on defense. Are you seeing the accountability or not? So are you implying like the accountability you're looking for is out of your hands? Or are you talking? What does he mean by that? We'll see later this week. So I guess he'll have to be asked later this week. Have you seen the accountability?
I think it means that he's seeing things that are perhaps glaringly unfixable and glaringly apparent. and he needs to go either back to the drawing board and make his own observations this week in terms of how they attempt to nip this in the bud, Sarah, before it starts to spiral. And let me just correct myself. It's spiraling right now.
Yeah.
Things are spiraling. This season is hanging on by a thread. And while Jay Glazer on his Fox Sports pregame show acknowledged that there's an outside shot based on his reporting that Lamar could go next week against the Rams, are any of us banking on that?
Didn't we just go through this with Ian Rappaport this week?
We did. But I think what I'm saying is, should anybody bank on, as great as he is, and I don't mean any disrespect to Lamar whatsoever by this comment, would Lamar have been the difference today? I know the ultimate score would have been different. Would the outcome have been different? I can't sit here and confidently tell you, given what's happening on the other side of the ball, Sarah, and special teams, quite frankly, that today's outcome would have been different.
Well, it would be unfair to expect that when I just went through it, right? That they had, let me see here. Let me get the exact scoring, the exact possessions for these guys every time they had the ball. So touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 field goal, touchdown, field goal. Finally, a punt with 7:27 left in the fourth quarter. And I don't remember if their backup was in at that point. So to answer your question, one punt and the game was over. One punt that didn't come until 7:27. So to answer your question about Lamar Jackson is, even if he were to come back, that is completely unfair to expect him to match every score like this.
With a bad hamstring.
I don't care if it was Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, whoever you want, Joe Burrow, Allen, bring back Tom Brady. You cannot expect any quarterback to match touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 field goal, touchdown, field goal. Bring back your Hall of Famers. Bring them all back. That can't be the expectation. And Tom Brady and those guys didn't have to play with that. They didn't have to. And so that's why I'm saying, even if these guys come back, whether it's next week or after the bye, what are they coming back to? And there's just isn't a recipe. Kyle Van always said it, Bobby, like with the injuries for sure are a part of this, and you can't dismiss it. They wouldn't have lost 44-10 if they had all their guys. Okay. They wouldn't have lost 44-10. Maybe they could have won it if they had all their guys, but they're not going to beat the Bills or the Lions or the Chiefs or anybody else like this. And so you just have to ask yourself, which is what Kyle Van Noy was asked, is the locker room lost? And that's essentially what they were asking KVN, and he never answered. And backing up to when John was asked about whether or not it was time to change personnel with Zach Orr, who asked that question? That was Jeff Zrebiec. That wasn't, he is the leader of the Ravens media. He's the unofficial leader of the Ravens media that's in there. When you see Jeff Zrebiec tweet, you see all Ravens media follow suit and almost do the exact same thing that Jeff does. Jeff is the most even-handed, most unbiased, most patient, all those types of things. The question came from Jeff. It came from Jeff, which is telling you how serious this has gotten.
Much like the tweet that we have up on the screen, which is also from Jeff, and it came in game. And it reads, even when the Ravens have been undermanned in the past under John Harbaugh, they've at least showed some fight and some pushback. They're showing none of that today. And that certainly still stands, even though that was in game now that the game is over. Sarah, we've seen undermanned John Harbaugh teams, as Jeff noted. One that comes to mind, or a couple that come to mind, is when both Lamar was down in the second half of 21 and 22. And gosh, you remember the COVID game in 2020 when they had their outbreak? At the time, it was one of the biggest outbreaks in the world, in the country, much less in a professional sports organization at that time. And they went out and played the Steelers tough. There was nothing tough about today. When you can point to Jair Alexander, this was interesting antics of his. I'm not sure if he knew that Jalen Knoll had never scored a touchdown in his NFL career until the one today that came, and he did the Ray Lewis squirrel dance in the end zone, which just shows you how what's the right word? I mean, is it unfearful? Is that a word? Unfeared, non-feared? That's what the Ravens are when at their home turf, at the bank, you've got a rookie that's doing the Ray Lewis squirrel dance after scoring his first touchdown. What does Jair do after? Tries to rip his first ever football that he scored right out of his hands.
I appreciate at least a little bit of life. Jair isn't even like drafted by the Ravens or whatever, but he's still defending that honor. I appreciate some sort of life from somewhere.
The only reason Jair's probably playing, all due respect to him, is given what the state of the secondary, just because they've been trying to ramp him back up after, maybe throwing him out there a little bit too soon in his ramp up period after the PCL tear and of course the knee drain at the start of the summer. But I mean, if that's the one play that's not even between the lines that you could point to, man, that what an indication of how brutal today was. And certainly the M&T Bank Stadium CBS camera shot of a wide shot, if you will, Sarah, was just as telling. Man, was it barren in the lower bowl. I tweeted it out mid-game. You could have convinced me, had I not seen the timestamp and the quarter mark, that it was halftime, and it was not even halfway through the third quarter at that time. We've already mentioned some of these numbers as well. Again, this was the 25th ranked overall offense, Sarah, through 4 weeks that came into Baltimore today and smacked the Ravens. That's CJ Stroud's group. We talked with John McClain at length about this in our Friday episode previewing the Houston Texans. look at them. Does this look like the 25th ranked overall unit to you, or maybe like top 5, top 3 after what they might be that, by the way, after the 5-game sample size based on what the Ravens gifted them today? 44 points, 417 total yards. That worked out to 6.3 yards per play. They were 7 for 12 on third down with very little pressure, to the point where J.J. Watt, Sarah, picked up on it very early on in this game in the CBS broadcast booth, essentially saying there's zero pressure at all on C.J. Stroud. We've watched that for 5 consecutive weeks. C.J. had time to survey the field. J.J. was saying by the end of the game, this looks like rookie year C.J. Stroud again. That's what the Ravens gifted the Texans today in terms of optics and ultimately the reality based on what they put on film. They lost the time of possession battle by more than 13 minutes, Sarah, and injuries or no injuries. Today was a colossal failure and one of the worst under John Harbaugh's watch over the last 18 years.
That's probably a good time to dive in deeper to both what happened on defense and offense, since we're kind of wrapping up coaching and what's going on there with questions about letting go of Zach Orr, this and that. But before we do, maybe we should do a read and some super chats.